Welcome to Within WordPress, the podcast about people within WordPress and the WordPress community and everyone around it. In today's edition, we have a new guest. With us today is Robbie. Welcome to the podcast, Robbie, and how may we know you?
Hi. So Remkus, because I'm trying to learn how to say your name properly.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. Yes, my name's Robbie Adair, and most people in the WordPress world know me through OS Training, which is the training company that I have, because we train all versions of CMSs. So we've got WordPress, we've got Joomla, we've got Drupal, and then we also now have some tools that are SaaS products in there as well. So basically anything web development. But obviously, as we all know, the market share is over in WordPress. So I do spend a lot of time in the WordPress world with the WordPress community. I also have an agency that I've had for over 20 years now, and we do web development projects and video production. And so we have worked a lot with WordPress as well over the years. And in the last 5 years or so, we've really been doing some interesting things with WordPress in our agency where we're using WordPress in conjunction with React apps or Laravel apps and things like that. And so
that's a lot of training that you're doing. How did you get into training?
So oddly enough, before I started my agency, I worked in corporate America in training. I was the training director for New Horizons. Actually, I developed the web development training that we offered in Houston, Texas. And back in the day when we were doing Dreamweaver and things like that. And then, I just stayed with web development after that when we started the agency. And we did a lot of custom training with our agency for clients, but we didn't offer just, open training. But OS Training, I knew the owner, Steve Burge, and he was looking for someone to do in-class training for Joomla in the Houston area. And so I was like, I miss training, running my agency. And so I would just every now and then go and teach some classes for him. And I enjoyed it because it just got me back in front of the classroom. And I really do like doing that. And I do a lot of speaking now. So that was kind of where I was like, I'll just move into doing speaking at conferences and such. And I do enjoy that a lot. I do a lot of it because it keeps me on my toes. I feel like you're always having to prepare to present, right? Or you're preparing to teach. And so it keeps you where you're always constantly having to learn yourself. And, but then whenever Steve was looking to sell OS Training, I was like, I loved doing the little bits of training I was doing for him. And so I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And so 4 years ago, I purchased OS Training from him. And so we have the agency and OS Training. And OS Training is pretty well known in the Joomla and Drupal world already, but it was not very known in the WordPress world. And because WordPress is a big world, right? I mean, it's
huge.
So it's like you're a small fish in a big sea. And so I said, well, I need to do the exact same thing that we do in the Drupal and Joomla world, which is we participate in their conferences. We speak at the events. I coordinated Joomla Texas and Joomla USA for years. Rod, one of my trainers, he speaks at the Drupal camps all over the place. And so I said, I'm going to start getting involved in WordPress. And so that's what I did right before the pandemic, actually, of course. I went to the first WordPress event and then everything shut down. And I was like, oh no. But as soon as they even started doing online conferences, I was like, let me speak. I want to get involved. How can I help? What can I do? Just get involved and meet people in the community. So I was so happy when you asked me to be on here because I was like, I love these kind of things because it just, I'm always looking at podcasts, just trying to see who's who in the community and who does what. And so I love it. So thank you for doing these type of podcasts.
Oh, happy to do so. It's been on my bucket list for ages to do it. And I just couldn't make time away from whatever else I was doing. That just didn't happen. But the whole goal of this podcast is for anybody listening to get a better understanding who is inside of this huge community. Because I've been part of the core community, I would say, is probably around 2007, 2008. And I know where plugins come from. Who was the original developer? Great example, for instance, is all-in-one SEO. Most people know that's Awesome Motive that is running that, but I know it was originally created by Uberdose, and nobody even knows that. But having that history is all nice, but if nobody learns from a little bit of that history, then we're just looking at the current state of affairs. And I think that is a poor way to look at things, just from the here and now. There is history, so we might as well find a way to incorporate that. And that's one of my goals, to have people, interview people, talk to people that are contributing in one way or another. And I was actually, there were multiple people pointing you out to me. It's like, that'd be a great person to talk to. So I'm like, okay, I in hindsight, I knew who you were, but when you start looking into somebody, there's always like, oh, this is happening. Oh, that's also happening. Interesting. So my curiosity is, on the training side of things, little side step before, and then but probably around 2010 to 2015, I did a lot of training myself for a company here in the Netherlands called Learn It. And a friend of mine was the country director for New Horizons. When you just said New Horizons, like, hey, I've heard that name before. But I did a lot of Microsoft Office project. I did a lot of advanced Excel and that sort of stuff. And funnily enough, for them, I did some custom WordPress courses. At the time, nobody was doing that. So funny that there's a shared sort of small history there.
Yes, it's always interesting to find how we connect. I mean, I find it all the time too. I was literally just at a conference last month, and I was talking to someone who, also we have a shared passion in theater. And so we were talking about theater, and she's doing some directing now. This is like on the side, right? These are just things that we like on the side, but she's doing some directing on the side. And I was like, oh, and she lived in the city I was at my high school in. And I said, oh, I said, I went to this high school. And she said, oh, I've done some like teaching there or whatever, I guess substitute teaching. And I was like, oh, do you know, Mr. O'Neill? And she was like, and then she was like, oh, wait, yes. She was like, I don't know him from there, but I directed him in a play last year or whatever, and I was just like, it's such a small world. It really is. And I find that all the time when I'm going to these conferences and talking to people, we can find shared things, just like knowing someone from New Horizons and doing training, And by the way, I was also teaching Microsoft. I was mouse certified. I did a lot of advanced Microsoft teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. I did. So I always had a knack for understanding complex stuff and explaining it relatively, breaking it down, like explaining it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. My dad used to always say that whenever I learned something new, he would just throw that in my face. I have no idea what you just said, but you can find a better way to say this. And then probably, let me think about this. And, but yeah, so that's how I rolled in. I had, I think I left a comment somewhere on some Excel forum, whatever. And then they reached out to me like, could you possibly do training? I'm like, sure, not a problem. But that's funny how that goes. It was a sidetrack then. I haven't done it in ages, but
well, but I will keep that in the back of my mind. So I may be don't you worry.
Oh, this is very deep. This is
That's right. That's right. You're getting yourself in trouble now. See.
Yeah.
But I mean, training, it's so key. It really is. I mean, because you've got to think. I mean, I do development. My team does development, but there's so much work out there right now that you can't find enough people a lot of times to get a project done. There's just that much work. So you wind up having to say, well, we can do this project, but we've got to push it out. Right. And so to me, training is key. We need more web developers. We need more people that know how, and they need to know from ground up. So I'm a big proponent of, even if you're going to teach Word, let's say, you need to start from the ground up. You need to teach them where menus are located, where tools are located. You've got to start, and you've got to start from the whole ground up of saying, here's how the breakdown of this software, because then that's going to make it easier as you flow through your training to know where you're going to find things. I mean, if we're talking about WordPress, the left-hand menu and global settings versus, a particular setting. How do plugins actually work in there and things like that. Yep. So learning some of the core theory behind how something works is just going to make it way easier for you to learn more advanced things later on. Can you teach somebody how to just go into WordPress and make a post? Yeah. but you're kind of doing them a disservice if that's all you're going to show them how to do. They need to know a little bit more, even if they work, maybe they're one of your clients and all they're going to do is go in and add blog posts, let's say.
Yeah.
You still should teach them enough about it so that they understand when they go in there and they're not overwhelmed and they just kind of have a sense of that's where those things are. And I don't need to touch those. This is where I'm going to go, but at least they understand something.
Yeah. I fully agree with you. So I've always been in the habit of creating short tutorials for clients. I publish them on a separate YouTube channel. Nobody has access to it other than the client that I send the link. And instead of just answering the question that they have, like how do I change a menu, or where do I add this or that, or I keep forgetting how to do this, which I then obviously is the meat of the tutorial that I create. And they're like short ones, like 5, 6, 7 minutes. That's it. But I always navigate to that and don't just start in that screen, right? So for instance, in the beginning, now they're most of them are very well used to the Yoast SEO settings, what to do, where to pay attention to. That's what I do. But what you'll see in a lot of tutorials is that they'll just start with that screen. And I know how to get there, but there's clients that don't understand that you need to be in a post, whether that's an existing or new one, and then find the meta box and then add your insights to it. So I always take into account that they may forget what I find such a normal thing to do. So that's a good example. Yeah. So
Yes.
don't assume, right?
Yes. And we've over the years with our agency did the same thing you did. I mean, we would, when we were turning over a website to a client, or at least turning over so they could start putting some content in, we did that same thing. We would either just do a live Zoom that we recorded and then chopped up into pieces for them later on, or we would actually just record some little snippets. And a lot of times we would even put it in the administration of their site so they could access them from the back end or whatever. But giving them those little chunks. But I always did start from, okay, we're going to start with log into the administration. Now go here, now go here, now go here. Now we're going to do what we're doing. Even if I was going to be showing them like 5 things in a post, I still would start each one that way, because you're right. I mean, especially when you talk about people who have to just maintain websites out there, they're not necessarily in it every day like we are. And so it may have seemed real easy that day you showed them how to make a post. And then fast forward 2 months later, and they've done all this other work that may not be related to web at all. And then you're expecting them to log into a website and make a post. And they're just like, I've slept since then, you know?
Yeah. I have the example of every now and then I get the simple question, like, how do I log in? And they know how to log in. They just don't know where to find the login.
Exactly.
And I go like, because I remember at one time I was recreating a site into a modern version, a modern version of the same site, but in a different theme. And essentially just copy posted over a lot of CSS, a day's work. Published it, emailed the client, and they go, great, this works so much better. Wonderful. But how do I log in? And I go, how do you log in? So what I had not included in the new version was in the footer at the bottom, there was a little link that log in, and like, why would you need it there? So I just left it out. But yeah, people need that stuff. They
do.
Not everybody is wired the same way. And that's funny to learn where somebody's entry point is. And speaking of entry points, is there a particular crowd that you're focusing on? Is it like, are you focusing on development necessarily, or configurators, or?
I was going to say, I call them integrators is what I call it. It's someone who's going to have to do a little bit of everything in web development. Here's someone who wants to actually learn how to do everything, or to learn how to be a full-time web developer if they wanted to. So our classes are geared more towards beginner. And then we have some intermediate. We break down a lot of things into like plugins, or, like very specific things, or how to build a website that does X, those kind of things, or just in general, how, learn WordPress, learn Joomla, learn Drupal. And those are we build a site in those courses so that they actually get practical experience, not just watching videos and listening to it. If they follow along, and at the end of it, they'll have a full website built. And that, to me, doing is the best way to learn.
Yep.
but you need guidance to do it, right? Otherwise you get frustrated and you quit. So having something where it walks you through and guides you through doing it, I think it's the best way for people to learn. Some of those other courses are good for like intermediate or people who are already or web developers may just go, hey, I'm going to go watch this course to see if that plugin does what I need it to do for this project. So I think we sometimes have some people are just web developers that are using it for very specific needs that they have in their education, not necessarily I need to go learn how to do, a CMS because I know how to do that, but I want to see this particular plugin. How do you configure it? How does it work? And is it going to fit the need for what I have in this project? Because we have a lot of companies that may have, like 10 seats because they have a whole web development department and each person has a seat. And so they're all looking at different things. We do have this, excuse me, we do have some development courses, just not as no, I wouldn't call us a heavy core development training though. We're not doing like learn Java and things like that. We're not there. We do have some development. It is all obviously based around the web languages like PHP or JavaScript. So it's based on those languages. And then of course we do have, I actually had Jen Kramer do new HTML, CSS courses for us a couple of years ago that were, you know, just learning from scratch, HTML and CSS. And then I had her do a second course where she took what they built in that course and then made it all responsive. And my whole point of doing that is we tell people in all of the CMS classes, we're like, if you don't know any HTML or any CSS, we highly recommend that you do one of these courses because even though you're probably not going to code when you get into WordPress or Joomla or Drupal right off the bat anyway, understanding, being able to look at the code and see why is this not doing what I'm telling it to do at this, but it's, I'm telling it to be green, but it's turning out blue. Why is that? Being able to look at that source code and at least have a hint of where do I need to go? Or if it's just not an option that I can do, how can I put in custom CSS? Now, of course, the other thing that I've been doing talks and I'm going to work on from those talks that I'm doing at conferences, I'm going to build a little course, which is using AI to help you speed up your web build.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, how do you integrate AI? So good for...
good segue, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I tell you, my AI talks have been very, very popular. So I was always amazed because I usually speak about pretty niche things. And so I have smaller crowds, I feel like, but I was like, wow, I just spoke about it up in, at WordCamp Montclair and it was standing room only. There were people who couldn't even get in the room. I felt bad. I was like, but it is a hot topic right now though. It's a hot topic. And it is, I tell people like when you're trying to learn about AI right now, like I subscribe to emails that, daily send me updates on what's going on in the AI world. And it is literally like drinking from a fire hose to try and keep up with it right now. There's so much going on. I listen to podcasts and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I mean, like in 1 week's time, AI like kind of shifts a little bit. And the next week it's shifted a little bit more. And you're just like blown away every week by what's being done out there. But there's just some key core things that web developers or web builders is what I should start saying. I'm trying to correct myself because I say web developers because we've been called that for so long. Yeah. But now when you say web developer, it typically people think of backend developers and such. Yeah. And I'm really meaning a website builder, right? I'm meaning builders. They could be on front or back end builders of websites. Can use this because one, helping you write CSS, it is brilliant at. I mean, you could use Bard or ChatGPT and helping you build your CSS.
Oh, you can tell it in words what you want it to do.
Yes.
I guess the only thing you need to figure out is what's the class I need to target. Other than that, just tell it what it needs to do.
And even better than that, you can tell it the class you want to target, or if you don't have a class, you can tell it what you would like it to name your class in there.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is it remembers your conversation, right? And so if you go and you then show it to the client's like, oh, I love that rounded corner red box with the orange outline that you did there. But can we make that a green outline? Or could you make one corner square or whatever? And you're like, sure. And then you can just go back over there and go, hey, could you give me that same CSS, but only with a round or a square corner in the right? And boom, it remembered, it spits it all back out to you properly with the right class name that you had said and all that, and you just pop it in. It's great.
I'm thinking now that the famous question that people in web development in the broader sense of the word, like, really don't like to hear is when a client says, can you make the logo bigger or smaller? Right. I guess we can just tell them now, no, but you can do it yourself. Just ask ChatGPT to do it for you. Here's how you would do that. Knock yourself out. And if you want the logo bigger, but the footer, whatever, less high,
Mhm.
figure it out. Um,
Yeah, I do try to stress to people because there was a lot of anxiety. Like if you think about a year ago, people were kind of getting very anxious about, oh, AI is going to kill web development jobs and it's going to,
mm,
it's going to eliminate jobs and things like that. Actually, so far, all AI has done is created a new career called prompt engineer, but it's only helping people in those industries. It's not taking
yeah.
their jobs away because yes, you could tell your client, you know what, ChatGPT can write that CSS for you. But guess what? Your client has no clue really what to ask ChatGPT
Yeah.
for. And even when ChatGPT gives it back, they're going to be like, well, that's real fancy and pretty code. But
Well,
where do I put it? How does it work?
I
So,
have the example of whenever you're at a client and they tell you something they've read, and I go like, how did you find that? And then you see what they actually type in the search machine. Uh, I don't know, but most people working on front end development type of stuff know how to engineer a search engine prompt, right? So we know we need to target. So especially if you know the extra parameters you can use, but we play with that. Most of us do, at least.
mhm,
And then when you see somebody who's absolutely has no clue other than just type in words, hit enter, and use full sentences and stuff that actually makes no sense.
right.
And for to have that in the back of your mind, looking at how AI is going to rob everybody's jobs, I'm like, no, no, you don't get it. It's going to enrich in it, and it's only going to start with a very small niche, very
Yes.
small part of the population that understands how to leverage this. Um, I don't know if you've seen the example Joe Hoyle from Human Made demonstrated a month and a half back or so,
Mm-mm.
where he essentially has an AI hooked into essentially outputting ready code that you can have the blocks and the content inside and the images and all that. It just generates it for you,
Mhm.
in the editor.
Like scaffolds it up for you.
Yeah, yeah. So the only thing you have to do is double check the text if that's what you want to say, and then next. And then the next page you'll want a different layout, and you tell it what kind of different layout you want, and maybe include 2 testimonials and this and that. But it will spit out the code for you, and I'd like to think that's the type of direction we're going into. So um, when you spoke of implementers, um, another term that you'll hear is configurators. But it's
Mhm.
essentially that crowd will see an enrichment of what they can do because they'll need way less time to do the same thing. And um, if you can find yourself in a position where that's what you're doing and then charge the same, then that's profit in time and
Exactly. Yes, exactly. What I see is that we're all going to be doing what we've been doing. We'll just be able to do it faster.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, could I write the CSS code for that? Absolutely. Now I might because you get rusty and you have to go like, let me go Google what's that command for this? I want to make whatever. Or oh, I need this to be cross browser. So what do I need to do to make these rounded corners be cross
Yeah.
browser? So that's time. Whereas if I can just go in and go, write this for me, that's faster. I do have to know enough and have enough knowledge to know that what I have received from it will work and is
You
proper.
need the verbiage. You need to
Hmm.
understand the words you need to use. Yeah, for sure. But
Yes.
yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a huge enrichment of, I've used it for so many things, like, from code enhancing, dissecting spaghetti code. That's my
Yep.
favorite. Tell me what is happening here because I'm lost. Like
Yep.
this is 500 lines. Please help me out here. And it'll tell me
I,
exactly.
so
That's
by
what,
the way, if you tell Chat GPT, explain this code to me like a noob,
yeah,
it
yeah,
will break down line by line and tell you what is going on in each line of that code. And it's
yeah.
brilliant.
For those of us who keep forgetting what a Boolean or a variable in strict mode and all of those things, it just, I love it. So I'm assuming that you do not see this as a threat to training at all.
No, so in training world, we actually use it as well. One, like I said, I'm using it to train people how to do what they do a little bit faster, right? So,
Yep.
like for instance, have you ever had to dig through web logs trying to figure out what the error was that happened on a
Yep.
server? You know,
Yep.
you can just throw a web log into
Today.
ChatGPT and you can say, please find any irregularities or whatever. You can tell it to sort that log how you want. It saves you so much time. So there's so many things that are time savers on there. Now on the training side as well, though, it also helps speed up creating your training because you can actually use AI to help you generate content for dummy sites, let's say, and and or help you. I want to explain this in a different way. Here,
Yep.
this is what I say. Explain this to me in a different way because again, like you said, sometimes you tell somebody something and they're like, I don't get it. And so you have to then think of another way, write another story
Yep.
or analogy, just something like that. Well, sometimes you're just like, I can't think of another way to explain this. Well, you could put that in there and it could give you other ideas. And from that, it'll probably spin off and you'll create your own idea from it, but it make it you out of being stuck. And that's what I tell people, like, especially if you write, like, let's say you write blogs or you write training materials or you just write creative, whatever.
Yep.
You get like writer's block. You're like stuck in a way where you're like, I don't know what I need to do next, or I don't know how to explain this better or whatever. Using AI to get you unstuck is a great thing because not saying have it write it for you because you also, I always tell people, if you take anything straight out of one of the AI tools, please go run it through a plagiarism checker.
And
You know,
you
you might
quickly see
also,
you're not
yeah,
that unique, and it tells you
exactly.
this is AI. Yep.
Oh, yes, yes, it knows. Yeah, you go to zero GPT and it'll tell you if something has been, created with AI,
Yep.
generated with AI. So, and imagery too. So I love Adobe Firefly, or the Adobe products, I should say. In general, we were talking about the Adobe products before this. I love the
Yeah.
Adobe products, and I will say I feel like they're kind of moving in the right direction. We've got Dolly and we've got Midjourney, but Adobe is trying to approach it from we're going to train our AI from our own stock. We're not just taking anybody's artwork out there. So they're trying to be ethical about what they're putting into their AI. They are
They are.
also now writing a script that people will be able to put on their own artwork that says, I do not want my artwork to be included in AI. So to me, they're doing some really, they have to. I mean, they're all about graphics, right? I mean, Adobe, they have to make sure that what they're going to put out there is going to be usable for everybody out there.
Yeah.
So I like what they're doing in the AI space for creators out there and protecting artists and things like that.
Yeah. I agree. It's refreshing to see Adobe actually getting it. If I'm being really honest,
Yeah.
it's for the longest time. I think they've been sort of cruising. Yeah. At least that's how it came across to me. They're sort of
Mhm.
cruising on their path of features and stuff that they're improvements, sure, but I've never found them to be on the innovative side of things. But now with AI, they definitely are. It's amazing what they have added to the capabilities of the system. Are
Yeah.
you? Do you have any courses and training in that area, or is it strictly to CMSs and code side of things?
So far, what we've done with our courses has just been really web tool. So CMSs
Yeah. Okay.
or maybe plugins that work in those, or maybe some of the tools like this is how you use FileZilla, things like that. So it's tool based. We have not spread out to like the graphics world. We did have a GIMP. We did have a GIMP
That would
because
make sense with OS in your name,
right, exactly. But
because I'm
like I
assuming
said,
it refers to open source.
that is where it started. Yes, that is
Yeah.
Steve when he started it. It was open source training. When I bought it, I just changed it to be OS. And we're because we have some things on there now that are not necessarily open source.
Okay.
Mostly it's open source, but we do have some tools that are not open source on there, and some SaaS products that are not open source.
What kind of
Just
SaaS
because,
products?
like Ecwid or Shopify, we have some courses
Yep.
on those. And just because we think it's important. I mean, we love open source and we work in the open source world in our agency and such. But I do think everybody, even in the open source world, we work with tools that are not open source. And so I was like, I feel like we've got some missing chunks in our training here if we don't
Yep.
have some of those things. So,
Yep.
so
I
that
agree.
was why we were like, we were like, maybe we'll just call OS as like one stock or something like that. We're like, we'll call it something else, but it originally was
A
open source.
rebrand within the rebrand.
Exactly.
That's funny.
So yeah, but I would like to do some graphics, but there's so many good, like very high end training courses out there for Adobe. Not to mention they themselves put out a lot of good training. And so I'm not sure that Adobe would be the path that we would take, or we might do something very specific, like, how to optimize your images using Photoshop or GIMP, something like
Yep.
that. So something that's still more web based, web development based, but using Adobe or using GIMP or using an online. There's a lot of online compression tools now that are
There
pretty
is.
good.
I, I think the whole, on the tool side of things, I think there's a huge field that is, let's take YouTube as an example. The
Hmm.
stuff that you can find there in depth is just
Yeah.
mind blowing. There's very little on the creating side of things, not necessarily code, because code is very dependent on how someone is able to bring across what they're actually trying to do
Right.
or having you learn. On the creative side of things, so, me starting my podcast, having to have a video camera in front of me, uh, um, there's folks that explain that in depth, of like where to take care of this, how to do this, how to do that. Make sure you have this because that might also happen. And then if that happens, you also need to have that, that whole field of information. If, if, if you look at what is available on YouTube, I would say media is a great example where that works perfectly.
Hmm.
Canva tutorials, for instance, I've learned a bunch of, because Canva is a great tool. It's
Hmm.
like really great tool. There's very little that I had to figure out myself that wasn't available on YouTube, from bulk stuff to just quick do this and short codes and stuff like that. Um, how are you looking at YouTube as a content course slash different type of provider of training? Is that
So
something
this,
you're even bothered with and have an opinion about, or?
no, I do. I mean, I think YouTube's great. I feel at this point, I also get a mini degrees on YouTube myself because I learn on YouTube as well.
Yep.
And a lot of people do ask, they're like, how could you ever sell training memberships? Because I could just go on YouTube and learn this for free. I was like, well, you
Yep.
can go on YouTube. First of all, you've got to find it on YouTube. Second of all, most YouTube training is very short and concise and it's very pointed, right? Like Canva. I mean, when you want to go learn how to do something in Canva, it's probably pretty there are a few where they're going to take you through and teach you the whole thing, but most
Yeah.
of them are fairly pointed. This is how you do
Yeah.
X in Canva, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really good. I
And you
enjoy
skip the
that. And
basics.
sometimes I go use it, right? But so and I never worry about it because it's just like web development. I never worry, like with my agency over the years, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, are you worried that there won't be any work? I'm like, well, there's so much competition here with other web development agencies. And I'm like, there's so much work out there. There's room for everyone. That's what I say. There's room for everyone. And same in the
There
training
is.
industry. There is room for everyone. We're pretty pointed about trying to always give you something that you can follow all the way through and build if you want to. And
Mhm.
so having that where you can build along with it, a lot of times with your YouTube training videos, they're really just showing you this is how you go do the
Yep.
X and you go to this setting and do this and do that and do this. And they do show you and you can follow those steps along,
Yeah,
but
but they're
it's
skipping
not
stuff.
like this. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty concentrated. So I don't find it as competition necessarily. And we actually have our own YouTube channel. And we put out some of our what we'll do is like if our classes are getting older, so they're getting a little long in the leg, let's say Drupal 7. So
Yeah.
Drupal 7 is getting a little long in the legs, right? So we took
Yeah.
Drupal
Yeah. I
7
would
and we
hope
put it
so.
out on yeah, we put it well, you'd say that, but there are still people trying to
I
convert
know.
down.
That's why I said hope.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so we moved that over to YouTube. Actually, our Drupal classes had over 2 million views now, I think at this point. So,
Wow.
yeah, so it was pretty popular. Even now it's getting views. I think
Yeah.
it's a newer Drupal, but still. So we will take some of our courses and put them out on our YouTube channel where I think we've got over 40,000 subscribers now. And so
Nice.
we get a good amount of views. We get a lot of comments and interaction with our videos. So we like that. We also do our OS tip, which is a weekly short little tip video that we do.
Yep.
We've been on a Drupal stream
So
lately. So sorry if you look at our
you're
tips right
leveraging,
now.
you're properly leveraging YouTube, because I bet that if
Yes.
you have such a presence, 40K subscribers and that amount of views, that sort of starts to trickle back to people actually signing up for current courses. I don't know if you
Correct.
track that, but I'm assuming that's
Yes.
something that's happening.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we do it. I mean, we don't put something out there just as an advertisement for a course, let's say.
No.
We do try all of our stuff that we're putting out there. We are trying to give useful, helpful tips. Same with our blog. It's like we want to give you useful, helpful tips. These are free, but we may say, hey, we have a full course on this if you want to come and
Yeah.
check it
Yeah.
out.
Of course. That
Right.
makes
So,
sense.
I mean, so it is lead generation in a way, but it is useful lead generation.
Yeah.
It's used, and people may just take what they learned in that and go on about their day, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So but we do want that information in our blog and in our OS tips and things like that to be something that could actually help you and be something you would want to watch. And we try to make it short format. Those are short format. So it's a quick little bite of something. It's that more pointed niche information.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. I think the only downside for me, YouTube as a learning platform, is that it's siloed into just that one channel. There's very little interaction. There's no real communication with the creator other than hopefully he sees your comment and then possibly responds to that.
Mhm.
And that's what I like about WordPress as the community. That is a different place to learn. They may not all output their stuff on YouTube because my favorite way to learn is visually.
Mhm.
But the added value of the community for me is a huge plus. It's the
Absolutely.
it's a good way to separate something that's just learning or something that is then also something like it's learning, but it's the added benefit of getting to know the person behind it and seeing their other writings and how they interact. Like for me, Twitter or I guess I should say X, silly name, but is still the best platform to do this. Would you? How was your experience in terms of the community side of things of learning?
So totally agree. As a matter of fact, learn.wordpress.org, I think it's a great resource out
Oh,
there.
so much better now.
And
Yeah.
yes. And part of the training team, with Courtney, she does a fantastic job, by the way. I tell her,
She does.
I don't think she ever sleeps. That's what I've decided. I don't know how she gets so much done ever. So I think those are great resources. And you're right. Having communities, having forums that you can work in. I think a lot of the groups. So like just on Twitter, yes, there's a lot there. And or X, I guess I'm going to start
Yeah,
correcting myself as
it's
well. But
weird. It's
anyway,
weird.
it is weird. But yes, the community there is good, but I like the more pointed communities that might be in LinkedIn or Facebook because they're really, really like narrowed down focus groups. We even when
Yep.
we redid our OS training website, it was needing and it was, over 10 years old. And so we redid that last year and we put in a little community inside of OS training that was never there before. We had a ticketing system that believe me, people contact us all the time about our courses, asking us questions. They ask us
Yep.
questions outside of the courseware. They also, just actually send us compliments, which is really nice. And
Yep.
so
Yeah,
we
of course.
also wanted to have a community, like a timeline in there. And so we have that. And it's starting to pick up some traction because it was new. So, it's one more community out there for people probably, but we do have some
Yeah.
people that are starting to post on there, even if it's might be like, hey, I think this is the wrong video that's on this lesson or whatever. Like, oh yeah, thanks. We had the wrong number on that. We'll switch that, So sometimes it may be they're just helping us. But
Yeah.
a lot of times they may have questions. And so we can answer them directly in there. And then everyone sees it and everyone can benefit. And that was why we wanted to shift it. We had those ticketing systems and we were helping a lot of people, giving them good information, but that was not going anywhere unless we wrote a blog post about it. So we wanted to make it more visual there for people to be able to see and learn from other people, which I think that's the key about community, right? That's why live classroom training is always very beneficial. Well, two reasons. Two reasons why is problem with YouTube learning, right? You have less distraction. It's more focused when
Yeah.
you're in a classroom, or if you're on a training site and you're doing training. I'm not also seeing little blips over here of, oh, the latest trailer on Oppenheimer, whatever, or the Barbie trailer, whatever. I'm not seeing distraction. Whereas on YouTube, I'm seeing distraction and I can go down all these little rabbit holes, right? And all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're like, what did I even come to YouTube for? I forgot.
Yeah.
And so, but when you go to a training site and you're like,
I feel seen now.
right? Oh, I
Yeah.
do it too. I do it
Yeah.
too. I know. I'm like, no one needs to look
The,
at my
the
history because
Apple
I look
TV
like a
takes
psycho.
the Apple TV takes 10 seconds to boot up, and then I go like, what was I going to watch again?
Oh, huh?
Oh, never mind, never mind.
I mean, I have that problem with my phone. Sometimes I pick up my phone pointedly to do something, send somebody a message or,
Yeah, yeah.
send something to one of the team members in Slack, something. But then I've got notifications and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Let me go do this. And then I set my phone down and then I'm like, wait, that's not what I even picked my phone up for. I've
No,
got to
no,
pick it
and
back up and do that.
you certainly don't have that in the classroom.
Right. I really like classroom, especially classroom where they don't have Wi-Fi connectivity for their
Yeah,
phones, where you can really get them to hone in. Um,
Wi-Fi
that
blockers.
yeah, we see that less often these days, though, that kind of focus, learning, once you get past college, you just don't see that kind of, New Horizons, they're still out there, but they're much
Yeah,
smaller because there's less people going into classroom learning, unfortunately, because we're all busy. And now we're all used to, well, I can just do that remote. But sometimes I think you do yourself a disservice because okay, I'm going to sign up for this remote class and you'll go in there, you'll open it up and probably, mute your mic. And then, oh, bing, you got an email. And then you're looking at that email and you're answering somebody over here. And then you
yeah,
might listen to what they're saying there. And then you're like, oh, wait, somebody's pinging me on Slack. And so it's very distracting. And so eh, having something where you can just focus in more, we even have a focus mode that you can turn on in our classes so that it's like all you see is the video that you're watching.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
That's a good point that the distractions within learning is a thing that we have to overcome. So I'm old enough to remember none of this existed. And, when you've grown up with something that is introduced, you know how to kind of find the mode before. But if I see my kids, and my eldest is 25 and youngest is 16, they don't know anything else. So they
Right.
are, I've, I've, I've been fortunate enough to have them wanting to listen to me in terms of setting up their profiles on their iPhones. Like, so you're blocking these apps from this time to that time, and notifications are
Mhm.
turned off by default. You know, don't have that constant. I need to see what's next, what's new. My
Mhm.
son in the beginning thought it was a good thing to have WhatsApp and email be prompted on his screen with the sound. I'm like, nah, that's probably not the best idea. And here's
Yeah.
why. But yeah, that's a challenge to find a learning environment where you can provide the optimal learning methodology and environment. And
Mhm.
in reality, you can't. You can only do the methodology. So you have a distraction-free mode, you said. Is there anything else that you incorporate? Like, here's what you need to be not doing, or
No, I mean, we really don't. I mean, we don't. I mean, people might get a little upset if you start telling them, you really should turn on your, do not disturb while you're doing your training because they're going to be just like, I can't.
yeah,
I'm in work.
yeah,
I'm blah,
there's
blah,
that.
blah. You
Yeah,
get it. Yeah. I mean,
I'm
I
a
get
grown
it.
person. I can do what I want.
Exactly. But so one of the things is because, again, and this is also, it's not just the younger generation. I don't want to say that because I think I'm the same way. We can't, our attention spans are shorter. Our attention spans get shorter and shorter as we get more and more notifications, more and more social media platforms. They have little
Yep.
blips. This is shortening our attention span. And so we always, when we're building our classes, we try to make the lessons not too long, each lesson. Now, like our Drupal class, maybe 5.5 hours if you watch the whole thing, right? But
Yeah.
you can watch it in little, 10 to 20-minute chunks. And so, or even less, maybe it's a 6-minute lesson there. And doing that, it allows people because they can go, okay, well, I can watch 6 minutes or I can watch 12 minutes about this. And so I think that mentally it sets you up that you're like, okay, I can concentrate on this for that long. And then I'll decide when this lesson's over, can I go on and watch another lesson or do I need to pause this and go do something else and then come back and watch another lesson, which is distracting, but at least if we've broken it up for them, they have logical stop points that they can give themselves. And I have to do that myself. Like I said, I mean, I used to be able to, I could sit and watch, you know, a 4-hour class in one sitting and learn, but that was a very long time ago that I could do that. Can
Yeah,
I do
same,
that
same.
today? No, I
As
mean, first of all, finding a 4-hour block,
Yeah,
it's
good luck with
hard.
that one. Well,
Yeah.
as you were giving this example, I was reminded of there's a few very WordPress heavy content creators on YouTube.
Mm.
Most of them have relatively short videos, but there's a few who have like these 2, 3 hour long. This is how we create a WordPress site. And I go like, just by looking at that number, like 3 hours, I'm not even gonna. I mean, I'm curious what they would teach and what they would say and what they would admit, and I don't even want to start thinking about sitting down for 3 hours and then.
Mhm. I was
Mm,
gonna say, so the content creators on YouTube, especially if they are content creators, and this is how they are making their money.
mm,
Luckily for us, I mean, that's not how we're making our money. It's a side benefit to OS training that we put these videos out there. It is a lead generation back with our OS tips, but it is
yep.
by no means how we are making our money, right? So we're not making our money being content creators on there. But if you are making your money being a content creator on there, it does dictate some things that you need to do to make more money, right? So there
Yeah.
for a while, YouTube was giving you much more. You were getting like a bonus money almost for doing long format. So they were wanting the long format. And so we saw a lot more. There was like, you'll see trends, and the trends are typically happening when you see them change the monetization in the back end of YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Like now shorts, right? So shorts are a thing now. And so they're really wanting a lot of the shorts content. And so they're pushing that in the content creator world, and in the monetization, they're pushing that. Um, with the long format, eh, yeah, I'm kind of like you. If you're going to do a long format, I mean, I would prefer instead you break it up into a lot of little videos and put it in a playlist for me, and then let me hop
Yeah.
around myself.
Exactly.
But if you're going to do it in long format, and this is a lot more work on their part, please put it in little chapters so that I can
Yeah.
see all the logical breaks on that long format and skip to where I want to.
I'd still
Because
skip it.
I do,
I'd
I
still
mean,
skip it.
even I was gonna say,
Yeah.
even if they don't have it, I'm like kind of like scanning through. I need to find where they're gonna do this, I
Yeah.
mean,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, yeah. Which, I guess they still get credit for that. So I guess that's a good thing for them. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.